Picture this. It's 1954 and Greyhound just unveiled a bus so futuristic that people literally stopped in the street to stare. 2 levels, panoramic windows, a design so sleek it looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie, not on Route 66. This thing was supposed to be the future of American travel. But here's the kicker. It was also one of the biggest mechanical disasters in transportation history. I'm talking engine fires, cracked frames, and a cooling system that basically said, "I quit," every time the weather got above 70 degrees. So, how did the most beautiful bus ever built become a maintenance nightmare that nearly bankrupted Greyhound? Today, we're counting down the 20 weirdest, wildest, and most unbelievable facts about the Greyhound Scenicruiser. 20. It had 2 engines stacked on top of each other. Most buses have 1 engine. Makes sense, right? Well, Greyhound said, what if we just doubled that? The Scenicruiser used 2 Detroit diesel 471 engines mounted in a stack, one on top of the other. Each produced 140 horsepower, giving you 280 total. Now, on paper, brilliant. More power, better acceleration, able to cruise at highway speeds without breaking a sweat. But in reality, you just created a maintenance nightmare where fixing the bottom engine meant unbolting literally everything above it. Mechanics loved that. Just kidding. They wanted to throw wrenches at whoever designed this thing. But wait, because this dual engine setup leads us directly to fact number 19, and trust me, it gets worse. Number 19. The cooling system was basically a suggestion. Here's where things get spicy. Take 2 engines, stack them in an enclosed rear compartment, and then send them through Death Valley in July. What could go wrong? Everything! The cooling system on early Scenicruisers was so inadequate that drivers reported engine bay temperatures exceeding 200 degrees Fahrenheit. The engines would overheat, coolant would boil over, and sometimes, just sometimes, things would catch fire. Stop laughing! Greyhound had to issue emergency modifications within the first year just to keep these things from turning into rolling barbecues. Drivers nicknamed it the Toaster, and that's being generous. Number 18. It cost more than 4 regular buses. Each Scenicruiser cost Greyhound approximately $55,000 in 1954 dollars. Adjusted for inflation, that's over $600,000 today. For a bus, you could buy 4 standard highway coaches for that price. Greyhound ordered 1,001 of these things. Do the math. They dropped over $55 million on a vehicle design that hadn't been properly tested. This was corporate gambling on a scale that would make a Vegas casino blush. Therefore, when problems started cropping up, the financial pressure was insane. But Greyhound was committed. They had to make this work, which brings us to fact 17. Greyhound employees nicknamed it the Nightmare Cruiser. Behind closed doors, drivers and mechanics had some colorful names for this bus. The Nightmare Cruiser was the polite version. Others included the Mechanic's Retirement Plan and, my personal favorite, 2 engines, 200 problems. The maintenance logs from the first 2 years read like horror stories. Transmission failures, electrical gremlins, suspension issues, air conditioning that worked when it felt like it. These buses spent more time in the shop than on the road during their early years. But here's the twist. Passengers loved them. The complaints were all mechanical, never about the experience. So, Greyhound was stuck with a bus that was simultaneously their best marketing tool and their biggest operational headache. 16. The upper deck wasn't actually a second floor. This blows people's minds. When you see a Scenicruiser, it looks like a double-decker bus. Wrong. It's actually a deck-and-a-half design. The rear section is elevated, but not enough to create a true second story. Raymond Loewy did this for aerodynamics and that sleek futuristic profile, but it meant the upper level was more of a raised platform than a genuine second deck. Passengers in the back sat about 4 feet higher than those in the front, giving them that panoramic view everyone raved about. It was brilliant design psychology, making people feel like they were in something special without the engineering complexity of a true double-decker. But this split-level design created problems you wouldn't expect. 15. The frame would literally crack in half. Stop laughing, I'm serious. The split-level design put unusual stress on the chassis. That stepped frame, it created a weak point right where the lower and upper sections met. Under the constant flexing of highway travel, frames would develop cracks, sometimes catastrophic ones. Greyhound had to reinforce hundreds of buses. They added gussets, strengthened welds, basically performed emergency surgery on the entire fleet. Some buses were out of service for weeks getting these modifications. One report claimed nearly 30% of the fleet had frame issues within the first 3 years. But the problems didn't stop at the frame. Oh no. Therefore, engineers had to address fact number 14. The transmission came from a tank. To handle all that twin-engine power, Scenicruisers used a modified version of the Spicer transmission from the M47 Patton tank. Yeah, you read that right. Tank parts in a passenger bus. Now, you'd think military-grade equipment would be bulletproof, but here's the thing. Tanks don't drive 500 miles a day, 6 days a week, for years on end. The transmission was overbuilt for combat, but underdesigned for commercial service. Failures were common, and replacing one meant pulling both engines. Remember that fun dual-engine setup from Fact 20? It just keeps on giving. Mechanics reported transmission swaps taking 40-plus hours. For context, a normal bus transmission could be done in about 8. This is why mechanics drank. 13. It had air conditioning before cars did. Here's something actually cool. Literally. The Scenicruiser came standard with air conditioning at a time that was basically science fiction for most Americans. Home AC was rare, car AC was a luxury option. But Greyhound said, our buses, yeah, they're going to be ice cold. The system could cool the entire cabin to 72 degrees, even when it was 100 outside. When it worked, which, given the engine heat problems we talked about, was optimistic. Early AC systems would freeze up, stop working, or just blow hot air when the engines got too warm. But when everything functioned properly, passengers thought they'd died and gone to heaven. People would book Greyhound trips just to experience the AC. This was luxury travel in 1954. 12. Raymond Loewy designed it to look like a dolphin. The man himself, Raymond Loewy, said he wanted the Scenicruiser to evoke the smooth, powerful motion of a dolphin cutting through water. That curved front end, the streamlined profile, even the two-tone paint scheme, all inspired by marine life. And it worked. This thing looked fast standing still. The aerodynamics were actually legit. At highway speeds, it was significantly more fuel efficient than boxier competitors. That dolphin inspiration saved Greyhound millions in fuel costs over the bus's lifetime. But here's the irony. Dolphins don't overheat. They don't crack in half. They don't need 2 engines. Maybe Greyhound should have hired an actual dolphin to design the mechanical bits. Speaking of mechanical disasters, 11. Drivers needed special training just to operate it. You couldn't just hand someone the keys to a Scenicruiser. Oh no. Greyhound mandated special training courses because this bus handled like nothing else on the road. That raised rear section changed the center of gravity. The dual-engine power delivery was tricky. The air suspension system required a whole different driving technique. Drivers had to learn new braking distances, new turning radiuses, and how to manage that twin-engine throttle without roasting the transmissions. Some veteran drivers hated it and requested transfers back to regular coaches. Others fell in love with the power and visibility. But everyone agreed on one thing. This bus was different, and different meant expensive training programs which added to Greyhound's mounting costs. Therefore, fact number 10 becomes even more painful. 10. Greyhound lost money on every single trip. Here's the math that kept executives up at night. Each Scenicruiser cost 4 times more than a standard bus, required twice the maintenance, used more fuel, and needed specially trained drivers. But it sold tickets at the same price as regular routes. Greyhound was operating at a loss on every Scenicruiser route for years. They were literally paying for the privilege of offering luxury service. Why keep them running? Marketing. The Scenicruiser became Greyhound's brand identity. Those iconic buses and ads in movies in the American consciousness. That was more than quarterly profits. It was a decades-long marketing investment disguised as a transportation disaster. And it worked. When you think Greyhound, you think Scenicruiser, even if you've never actually seen one. Those gorgeous panoramic windows, each one was about 30% larger than standard bus windows. Amazing for sightseeing, terrible for everything else. In accidents, they'd shatter into massive shards. In hot weather, they'd turn the cabin into a greenhouse despite the AC. In cold weather, they'd leak heat like crazy. And replacing them? Each window cost more than some people's monthly rent. But passengers didn't care about any of that. They wanted those views. They wanted to feel like they were flying through America's landscape. So Greyhound ate the costs and kept replacing cracked windows because the customer experience demanded it. This is where you start to see the pattern. Every single feature that made passengers love the Scenicruiser made accountants and mechanics want to quit. Which brings us to fact number 8. It could only be serviced at special facilities. Remember how we said the Scenicruiser was basically unlike any other bus? Well, that meant standard bus depots couldn't work on them. Greyhound had to build dedicated Scenicruiser service facilities with higher bays, specialized tools, and trained technicians. These weren't cheap. We're talking millions in infrastructure investment across the country. Greyhound essentially created a parallel maintenance network just for one model. If a Scenicruiser broke down between service points, good luck. You'd either need to limp it to the nearest special facility or send a specialized rescue team. This is why Greyhound couldn't just sell these buses when they started causing problems. Who would buy them? Only Greyhound had the infrastructure to maintain them. They were trapped in their own beautiful, expensive nightmare. The bathroom. Okay, this one's actually hilarious. The bathroom, the restroom, the lavatory, whatever you want to call it, was located in the raised rear section, right above the engines. The 2 engines that ran at 200 degrees. You know what happens when you put a bathroom directly over dual overheating engines? You create the worst sauna in the world. Passengers reported the rear bathroom being 10 to 15 degrees hotter than the rest of the bus. In summer, forget it. You'd walk in there and immediately regret every life choice that led to that moment. One driver told a story about the bathroom door handle getting so hot it burned a passenger's hand. Greyhound added insulation, but physics is physics. When you stack passenger comfort directly over mechanical inferno, passenger comfort loses. Stop laughing, we're only at number 7. It appeared in over 50 movies and TV shows. Here's where the Scenicruiser redeemed itself. Hollywood loved this bus. That distinctive profile made it instantly recognizable on screen. If you needed to establish road trip or cross-country journey, you stuck a Scenicruiser in the shot. It appeared in everything from the Fugitive TV series to It Happened at the World's Fair with Elvis. The bus became a cultural icon, representing post-war American optimism and freedom. No other bus, not even close, achieved that kind of pop culture penetration. Greyhound didn't have to pay for this advertising. Hollywood came to them. The Scenicruiser was famous for being famous, and that self-perpetuating marketing cycle was priceless. Therefore, despite all the mechanical nightmares, Greyhound couldn't kill the program. The brand value was too high. 5. Some buses were destroyed in crashes caused by their own design. The raised rear section and modified center of gravity made scenic cruisers more prone to rollovers than conventional buses. In hard cornering or emergency maneuvers, that elevated rear section wanted to keep going straight while the front turned. Physics is cruel. Several fatal accidents in the late 1950s were attributed to handling characteristics unique to the scenic cruiser design. Greyhound quietly modified the suspension, added stabilizer bars, and retrained drivers. They never publicly admitted the design was flawed, but the modifications tell the story. This is the dark side of innovation. Sometimes pushing boundaries means learning painful lessons. Greyhound learned them at highway speeds with passengers aboard. But here's the thing. They learned, they adapted, and they kept improving. Which leads us to fact number 4. The later models were actually good. By the early 1960s, Greyhound had fixed most of the major issues. Better cooling systems, reinforced frames, upgraded transmissions. The Scenic Cruiser Mark II, though they never called it that officially, was a legitimately solid bus. Drivers who'd cursed the early models actually requested assignments on the later ones. The power was there, the reliability improved dramatically, and that iconic passenger experience remained intact. Between 1961 and their retirement in the mid-70s, Scenicruisers became, dare I say it, dependable. They'd finally achieved what they promised in 1954. It only took 7 years and millions of dollars to get there. But they got there. 3. Greyhound tried to sell them but couldn't. When Greyhound finally retired the Scenic Cruiser fleet in the 1970s, they tried to sell the buses. Makes sense, right? These things cost a fortune. Might as well recoup something. Nobody bought them. Other bus companies looked at the dual-engine setup, the specialized maintenance requirements, and the parts availability, all Greyhound proprietary by this point, and said, no thanks. Some were converted into mobile homes, a few became restaurants, most were scrapped. This is the ultimate proof that the Scenic Cruiser was a Greyhound-only proposition. Beautiful, iconic, utterly impractical for anyone else. It lived in its own ecosystem and couldn't survive outside it. 2. They cost more to scrap than they were worth. Here's a final slap in the face. Scrapping a Scenic Cruiser was more expensive than scrapping a regular bus. That aluminum body, the dual-engine setup, all those custom components, dismantling them took specialized labor. Some Greyhound facilities literally paid scrapyards to take the buses. Let that sink in. The bus that cost $55,000 new, that represented the future of American travel, that appeared in dozens of movies, ended up having negative salvage value. But before you feel too bad for Greyhound, remember fact number 1. It saved the company. Here's the plot twist. Despite everything, the cost overruns, the mechanical disasters, the maintenance nightmares, all of it, the Scenic Cruiser saved Greyhound. In the 1950s, Greyhound was facing extinction. Airlines were expanding, personal car ownership was skyrocketing, and intercity buses were seen as outdated. The Scenic Cruiser changed that perception. It made bus travel glamorous again, desirable, cool. Revenue increased, brand recognition soared, Greyhound became synonymous with American travel in a way no airline could match. The Scenic Cruiser bought them decades of cultural relevance and market dominance. So yes, it was a mechanical disaster. Yes, it probably lost money operationally, but as a brand-building exercise, as a statement of ambition and innovation, as a symbol of what American engineering could achieve when it swung for the fences, the Scenicruiser was an absolute home run. Sometimes the greatest successes look like failures when you're counting bolts and tracking maintenance hours, but when you zoom out and see the cultural impact, the brand legacy, the sheer audacity of building something that beautiful and that complicated, you realize Greyhound knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't building a bus, they were building a legend. If you loved this deep dive into automotive history's most beautiful disaster, hit that subscribe button because we've got even crazier stories coming your way.